rising. A little early, it's a bit surprising. Business moves, now we enterprising. Switch it up, now we improvising. Go to get in the winter college.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Clock Blockers, the #1 Miami fan morning show right here on the Miami Sports Music Podcast Network. We're in overtime. We usually get off around noon, but my man Jason Sarney set this up, so big shout outs to him. And I know everybody, all 283 of y'all that are watching, are going to hit the like button because that's what we do here on Miami Sports Music. We bring you the best. And the best today comes in the form of the best beat writer in Indianapolis. I'm talking about our man, Destin Adams from AtoZ Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, Destin. What's up, Destin?
Hey, guys, appreciate it. I don't know if I'd say I'm the best.
You are the
really
best.
Have
I don't care.
appreciated
You're on with
all
us.
the kind. That's all. I guess that's all it takes nowadays. But really appreciate all the kindness that I've gotten from the Miami fan base over these last couple of weeks. Not every fan base has been as receptive to the reporting of the Jonathan Taylor news. So Miami has definitely been my favorite to interact with throughout all this.
All right, before we dive into the Jonathan Taylor mess, and I know we have you for a limited amount of time, so thank you for coming on today. Just kind of tell me what set all of this up. We want to hear from your perspective. The Jonathan Taylor, how the fans see them, how Irsay sees them, how coaching staff sees them, all the way to where we're at now, where from the outside looking in, which is what we are, and the national media spotlight, it looks like this is a relationship that is just torn to pieces and cannot be resolved in any way, shape, or form. So, Destin, give us, the lowdown from, the beginning kind of to where we're at now.
Yeah, it's definitely a saga that has just never slept. It's been a busy situation covering it, but just to go all the way back to the beginning, earlier this offseason, in April even, Jonathan Taylor got in front of the media, said all the right things when he was asked about a contract extension, saying he was under contract, he was going to play out this year, and that when he got paid, wasn't as important. It was going to happen eventually, which is similar to what Michael Pittman's stance is now. Fast forward just a month later, Jonathan Taylor goes through the process, finds a new agent. That reason being that has been said to me because there was a lack of contract extension talks being had with the Colts, and goes on, changes his agent. Now represented by an entirely different person, different agency, and the approach that's going on, very different from what we heard in April. It's no longer, I'll get paid when I get paid. It's, I want to be paid now. And the problem on that stance is the Colts have no interest paying anyone at this moment while they're under contract, as they want to see this new offense play together. They want to see who fits in this offense. And the reality of the situation with Taylor, a big part of the Colts reluctancy to pay him right now is he's not 100% healthy. That ankle injury is real. I know Twitter talks about it all the time, about whether or not he's faking it or he stubbed his toe. I know all those things get talked about, but that ankle injury is not 100% healed. Like, that is the reality of the situation. He failed a physical when he got back, put on the pup for that reason. So the ankle injury is very real. So I think there's just reluctancy in that building because of that, and knowing that they want to see him be healthy again and see what that 2021 Jonathan Taylor that everyone looks back at and says, man, that guy is special. So they want to see that before they pay that. And Taylor and his camp aren't going for that right now. And I think that's what's boiled it over to this point, is it's two very, very far spectrum opinions on the situation where they're not going to meet in the middle. So I don't know if it's going to be resolved.
And now things have been said between the two parties as well. How does Irsay play into all of this? Because Dolphin fans, and granted, we don't know, we're the outside looking in, but again, it's a theory, or at least a media perspective, that Irsay's being petty in all of this. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't want to say that is. What is your take on Irsay in all this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are putting their disdain on Irsay a little bit incorrect. Like, Jim Irsay is not in charge of these negotiations. Jim Irsay historically lets his guys do their jobs. This last year was a crazy one for the Indianapolis area, obviously, for many different reasons. And one of those being that Irsay did something he normally doesn't do, and that was interject himself into the day-to-day operations of football. Made the decision of hiring Jeff Saturday himself. That was not a Chris Ballard decision. Jim Irsay hired Jeff Saturday. So that's something that we've not seen Jim Irsay do, but that was just how bad the year had went that he felt the need to interject himself. I believe things are back to where they used to be in the sense that Irsay is not interjecting himself into these negotiations. Chris Ballard and company, and his trusted employees and advisors, Ed Dobbs being someone to watch. He does a lot of trade negotiations with other teams. So I wouldn't be shocked if Ed was really taking the head of the conversation pieces with Miami, for example, and the other team that there is pretty extensive talks on as well at this moment. But I think Jim Irsay is not the person that deserves all the blame that he gets on Twitter.
Fair enough, Destin. This is really great stuff. And there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I want to clarify. And Steven, if you can do some sort of non-sound, these are important points. And I'm going to play the Dolphins devil's advocate. And I want you to literally fire back however you think. You said there's still a foot injury, that there's a legitimate concern on the Colts end for a foot injury. So there has to be a legitimate concern for other teams with a foot injury. Having said that, I want to kind of segue to the timeline of trades from your knowledge on how things work or how things could work or can work. Right now, it's under my understanding that there are multiple, as per Barry Jackson, who's the top dog of Miami beat writers, multiple offers are sent in from Chris Grier and the Dolphins to Ballard, Irsay, whoever, the Colts. So far, so good. Everything obviously doesn't happen after that until an offer is accepted, which has not been done yet. Now I want to talk about the Josh Jacobs contract that came out. We know that number is 11.8. And now you mentioned the foot injury. Has there been any whispers of money on the Colts end with the agents on Taylor's end? Or have you heard any rumblings on agreed upon money if there's an accepted deal from the Dolphins potentially in Jonathan Taylor's camp?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll speak on the Colts side of things. I mean, there's been no contract offer from the Colts. They are not even in the process of negotiating. I know the number that Taylor and his company have given to the Colts, saying that this is what they want. That's not something I'm at liberty to share, unfortunately. But I do know there is a number that they have given. I know that number is something that they're going to give to any of the teams that talk to them as well, because before any team is going to go talk to the Colts, they gave Jonathan Taylor and his agency the right to talk to teams and find a trade partner. So a big part of that is going to be figuring out if those teams are willing to meet that financial remains, because I mean, the money is the big issue here. For Taylor, if you don't pay him after you trade for him, you're just inheriting the issue that's on hand with the Colts. No team's going to want that. The teams want a happy Jonathan Taylor that is out there. And when it comes to the foot injury, I mean, the ankle injury, the big thing on this is, and I've said this online, I've said this on different shows as well, a lot of players are like this. This is not just a Jonathan Taylor situation where it's not that Jonathan Taylor's ankle is unplayable. From what I have heard, this is not something where he can't play. It's just when you are not under contract, you are way less reluctant to play at not 100%, right? So if you're not at that 100% place, it's hard to put yourself out there when you don't have that long-term deal in place. So from what I've heard, I think that if Taylor gets a long-term deal, which I would assume is just a need for any team that's going to trade for him, that the ankle is something that is not at 100%, but I think he'd be closer to playing than some would say, because that contract will get him out there earlier.
Fair enough on all those points, and I really appreciate it. Now let's talk about another tweet. Stephen Holder, I believe, correct me if I'm getting the name wrong. He said now that there's another team potentially involved. Can you corroborate? Yes or no?
Yeah, so from what I've heard this entire process, the Dolphins have had the most, I think the word I used in a recent article was fruitful. The Dolphins have had the most fruitful conversations with the Colts. And you mentioned your guys' beat reporter, and Barry has mentioned that there's been several offers made. That's a big part of it. I think there is a second team. I've heard of a second team throughout this whole process. I'm not sure how intensive those talks have gotten. I've not heard anything on how many negotiations have gone place. I know from what I heard yesterday, there still was not an offer that was coming close enough to meet the Colts asking price.
Including Miami's at this
point, that there was not an offer that came in that was close enough to that asking price for, I mean, we haven't seen a deal get accepted, so I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But I think there have been compromises made on Miami's end. And I think I understand a lot of fans who get frustrated through all these things saying the Colts aren't compromising. And I've had some people upset in my comments when I've released articles saying I just don't think the Colts are going to compromise, even if I think they should. Like, I just do not think, from what I have heard, that the Colts are very pressured to make a deal. I think they believe via the new CBA that Taylor will have to play at some point throughout this year to get to the offseason to where the franchise tag conversation would start. To where if they don't believe they get a deal that is fair to what they believe is value to them moving him, whether that is a correct value on the running back market and the running back position as a whole right now, is a whole entire different conversation and is not something that I agree in their evaluation, but I believe it is their evaluation.
Miami Sports Music's #1 Miami fan morning show, Clock Blockers, right here on the Miami Sports Music Podcast Network. Stephen Daniels, myself, Jason Sarney hosting. We have a guest right now on the line, Destin Adams, beat writer from AtoZ Sports for the Indianapolis Colts, and we're talking all things Jonathan Taylor saga and potential trade. Destin, let me kind of get into the situation as far as what I tweeted a few days in the last couple of days. I host a morning show. I am a fan for the fans. I don't have sources. I don't have multiple contacts, but I know some people. And it was said to me that the Dolphins had sent some medical people up to evaluate Jonathan Taylor. Nobody has straight denied it, but nobody's corroborated that either. The source I got it from, or I don't want to say source, the contact, because people are like, Steven's got sources. The contact I got it from, I'm very confident that the information he got was told. That is exactly what was told to him from that person. What I want to ask you, Destin, is because of the injury that Jonathan has, is it possible or plausible that a team was given permission to evaluate him before making a contract offer? I'm not saying full-blown physical. I'm saying evaluate him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the full purpose of letting teams talk to Taylor, talk to his agency, is to get that full understanding of what it looks like on their end. I'm sure they've communicated everything they've communicated about the injury, about the contract, all those things to be able to make a team feel comfortable enough to even come close to the Colts' high asking price for a trade. Like, those things have to happen for a team to feel good about making that offer, right? When it comes to them sending medical people down, I mean, I know Jonathan was in Philadelphia with the Colts, so I know he wasn't in Indianapolis on hand for if someone was sent out there to meet with him. I have not personally heard that any team has gone that route. I know that any team that does a trade holds the power to make it contingent
Upon
on a physical and
right.
contingent on what is found in that. Now, that can be waived by any team. Like, that is not a NFL mandated thing you have to hold up. Where if Jonathan Taylor comes in, gets a physical for X team that trades for him, like, the NFL does not mandate that a player cannot be traded if there's a concern on a medical, right? Like, that would come to the Dolphins or whoever traded for Jonathan Taylor to, if they wanted to make the trade contingent on that physical meeting their wishes, essentially.
All right. Now, in all the time you have been reporting on the Indianapolis Colts, have you ever seen a scenario where a team has been interested in a player's medical this much the way they are with Jonathan? And the reason I ask that is I know you said he was in Philadelphia for the game that night. It may have been told to me in not so many words that he could have flown back and flown right back out for the thing. It is possible. It's a 2-hour flight, right? I'm not saying it did happen. I'm saying it could have happened. And it's also been told to me that we don't know what happened in the prior couple of days or what was going to happen the following day from Philadelphia. Now, when I tweeted my tweet, it was in present time, in actual time. So it looked like, no, he's there. No, it was, this is happened or is going to happen. So have you ever seen another scenario where a team has dealt with some sort of injury evaluation before the trade has gone down? Or has it always been in your eyes that a physical happens after the trade has gone down?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to a team to allow a team to get that far without a trade being done,
Okay.
I guess. But like I said, there have been so many different situations. We've had trades fall through in the NFL because a player didn't pass a physical. So even if they don't get it on the beforehand, the Dolphins hold the full power where if they put an offer in and the Colts accepted it, the Dolphins would have full right to null and void that trade via the physical. So afterwards. Now, whether or not it's possible he could have flown back, I mean, sure, like it's possible. I have not heard anything to confirm
Okay.
or to deny your report.
Yep.
If that makes you feel better,
No,
I,
and I'm not asking you to confirm it. I just
yeah,
want people to know, yes, it's unlikely. I think the thing for people with me was, at least in the report that I had stated, is, hey, look, this doesn't happen in the NFL. And I'm saying it's plausible. It can happen. This is a very unique situation. Jonathan Taylor was given full permission to talk to every team in the NFL, or whoever was interested in talking with him. I think that in this particular situation, coming off an injury that he had, they're gonna do their due diligence. Did they do a full blown out physical? Probably not. But I think they definitely looked into his medical history and maybe even evaluated, on hand or on scene, whether it was in Philadelphia or Indy somewhere. I believe that happened.
I mean, it's very common for teams to disclose the medical information they have on a player as well. So, I mean, every team is going to have like that little file on a player, what they have seen, what their doctors personally have seen. Like those things can be shown if a team chooses to do so. I have not been told the Colts have done that. I've not been told the Colts have denied to do that.
Yep.
From what I've heard, the Colts have tried to be as transparent as possible with teams, with people involved. I mean, I know fans don't think that from what's been going on, but like the Colts have been pretty straightforward. We would prefer not to trade Jonathan. We prefer him to stay here. But if you find a way to meet this asking price, we're willing to play ball. Like that's basically what they've said to every team involved. So I can't imagine the Colts would be declining to share medical information if asked, because like I said, I think they've been trying to be as transparent as possible throughout this whole process.
Stephen, you mentioned the word plausible, and to Destin too. I love that word plausible because it's a hedge, but it's at the same time it's extremely plausible. Like that's so. I want to commend Stephen for using that word because that was the exact right word to use in that case. And it's unfortunately not something that we might know is ever corroborated one way or the other. But what I really want from your side, and you've been giving such great cult insight, and that's the point of this, is to kind of bridge the gaps of the fans and the coverage to really understand where we are. So Dolphins, we're all putting the Madden trades together. We're all having fun. It's a blast. I'm guilty of it too. Agba, Wilson, first, third, talk to us about the Colts salary cap situation to your knowledge. And if there is you kidding me? You're offering $15 million player in return. We don't want this $15 million player. We don't want that $7 million receiver. You're going to try to give us this cornerback? No. What are the Colts potentially, if anything, thinking from a player, from a contract coming back, in or addition to or in combination to draft pick compensation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would all depend, like you said, that draft pick package and what it looked like. I think in the Chris Ballard era, they really stay away from long-term bad contracts. So long-term dead money is a big thing that Ballard on his own negotiating has stayed away from, and in trades. Like that's not something we've seen them go about doing. So I think there's been a player thrown around in my comments a lot that Miami's trying to get off a contract wise. I think it's an edge rusher.
Emmanuel Agba.
Yeah, Emmanuel Agba. I remember looking.
We have a wide receiver down here too, if you want one. His name is Cedric Wilson. I mean, we'll just throw him in.
We're not representing. We're not trying to be arbiters right now.
Just take Cedric, man. Just take him.
Hey, like I said, I think if a trade package with picks could come close to where the Colts want, I think they'd be willing to play ball, and that's where I think the negotiating could start for them. And I think what I've said in the past is, I mean, every trade that happens in the NFL is all about compromises on both sides. This one's a little bit different because it feels like the Colts are going into these negotiations letting the teams know, hey, we don't want to trade this guy. This is what it would take for us to trade him. Like, so there's not much compromising being done on that aspect. So I think if you can come close to that, things will get interesting to where they're willing to have conversations about other things.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, right? So right now we're kind of playing a game, the Jonathan Taylor and the Colts are playing a game of chicken, right?
Yeah.
We saw this play out in Minnesota with Dalvin Cook. We saw this play out with Dalvin Cook and the Dolphins. We saw this play out with Dalvin Cook and the Jets. And obviously Saquon Barkley with the Giants and Josh Jacobs with the Raiders and Tony Pollard down in Dallas. This particular situation is very interesting because from what I have been told through social media, just the national outlook of this is that this relationship is soured. So it's funny, the Colts can say this is what their asking price is. Do you see Jonathan Taylor saying, I'm not playing another down for you guys?
I mean, I don't think that is where it's at. I really don't.
Okay.
From what I've heard, I mean, teammates still love the guy. I know people like to say all the time that he's like checked out. Like, I mean, he's still talking to teammates on the field. He may not be making himself available to the media and making himself look very happy that this is a public part of his life right now, which, I mean, I don't know if any of us would. Like this is the NFL's version of a TMZ swarming a guy on the street, basically, is what Jonathan Taylor saga has looked like. So I don't think it's at a point of no return because in the long run, Jonathan Taylor wants to be paid. If that's here, that's somewhere else. Like, that's the thing. I think the point of this right now is that he knows the Colts are not going to pay him right now, and he wants to be paid right now. So the fact that that's not happening on the Colts is why the trade request happened. That's why all this has played out publicly. But money talks. Like, if they got through the end of the year and Taylor played at a high level again, showing what he could be, and the Colts paid his asking price, I think this would be something people would just forget about in a year or two because money just fixes a lot of things in the NFL that people probably don't think is severable. But we'll see kind of how it plays out. But he wants to get paid now. The Colts have had zero interest in paying now to anyone, let alone
I have one last question for you, but I know Steven has a couple more. And
I got a couple more.
Steven is literally going to drive this thing home, and I'm riding shotgun, and I'm loving every second of it. So thanks again, Destin. I'm going to ask you another devil's advocate question, and if you don't feel comfortable, you can't answer it, it's totally cool. If you have to if you have to pick one of these closer, type of scenarios and what you think that would happen, do you think that the Dolphins would spend a multi-year deal I'm not asking for what you think of the money. The Dolphins are going to give Taylor his 3-year contract, which is probably double digits a year, which goes completely out of the Greer mindset normally, but I get Taylor's a special player, so I'm just throwing that sprinkle there. Is that 3-year, $35 million, what have you? Is that a better bet than the Colts keeping Jonathan Taylor for 1 year at a very fair 1-year deal like we've seen with other running backs, and then they cross the next bridge next year? What is the more – if I had to put one chip to save my life – I'm not asking you – I'm not putting you on the responsibility of my life, but I'm asking you to guide me.
There's a lot of pressure for your first appearance on the show.
I'm asking you to guide me. Am I going multi-year for the Dolphins? Same thing with other running backs, 1-year retention with the Colts, big money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say the most – I don't think the Colts are going to do a Jacobs situation. They're not going to increase his salary for this year to go. So I guess I would say the multi-year deal with the Dolphins is more likely. I will say the amount you just said I don't think is enough for what he wants. Now, the NFL contract world is the void years situation makes it to where you can make that cap hit less than it looks. But the 12-year, the 11 and some change that Barkley and Jacobs have gotten here recently, that will not fulfill the number that I've heard Jonathan Taylor and his camp want. The reality of the situation is the pressure that's been being put on him right now. I mean, at the beginning of this offseason, Jacobs and Barkley were looked at by this running back market around in the NFLPA like, save us, right? Save this running back market that's happening. Yep. And both of those two have had to compromise on what they wanted to get a deal done for this year, both of which can get tagged next year. That was the big one during these negotiations that I think would have been a win, even if they couldn't get the amount on a yearly salary that they wanted, was if they could prevent themselves from being tagged, make it to where they hit the open market next year, both of them, that would have been a win for the running back market, in my opinion. neither of those negotiations were able to happen. Both of them got a little bit of a raise to where the tag was, but both are eligible to be tagged next year. So now the pressure that was on those two, you combine it, and all eyes are now to Jonathan Taylor because that's the only running back currently in a negotiation standoff where this is the guy that can reset the market for us because they need someone. Because free agency next year is going to be big for running backs. There's a lot of running backs hitting it. A lot of top named running backs are going to hit the market, and they need this market to be fixed in a sense by that time.
Miami Sports Music's #1 Miami fan morning show, Clock Blockers, right here on the Miami Sports Music Podcast Network. Destin Adams from AtoZ Sports, Indianapolis Colts beat reporter. All right, I got a couple of questions for you. We're going to fire them off because I don't want to keep you all day, man. I appreciate you coming on. First question, man.
No problem.
Are the Indianapolis Colts interested in players being added to maybe some draft capital as well? You know, because look, we're dealing with the stuff right now with, and I know a lot of fans that are watching are not going to like me saying this, but it's an option that could happen. I need people to realize that Christian Wilkins, right? Or Cedric Wilson, or, you know, somebody that is also on this roster like Emmanuel Ogbah. There are multiple options here where the Indianapolis Colts could say, you know what, we won't take a first-round pick, but we might take a second round or a third rounder plus this player and some late draft capital on top of that as well. Is that something, are they negotiable for that? Or are they just straight saying it's a first-round pick no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first-round pick evaluation to whereas a package can add up to that. Now, every team has different trade charts and what things are worth and like to them. So like going on those things, I mean, I think NFL X, Twitter, whatever we want to call the app nowadays, they all have like different sites that they use for trade calculators and things like that. Each team has like their own people for that. The analytics department comes up with a lot of those things and what those things are worth. So getting to that evaluation is really the thing that matters. So when it comes to a player, I mean, if it's a second and you add in a young asset that maybe Miami won't need if Taylor's there, to like boost the deal and then add day 3 picks and yada yada, whatever that is to add up to a first round evaluation, I think that'd be considered. And then on the flip hand, I think if the Dolphins were to offer their first and then say, hey, we'll send you a first, but we need you to take off some of these bad contracts that we have to get this done, I think the Colts would play ball with that and see what that would look like. Now, I don't know if the Dolphins fans that are in my comments sometimes that post like every bad contract the Dolphins have say, well, here's a first and here's 4 players.
I can tell you them off the top of my head right now, Destin. And look, if they want, the GM wants to speak to me, I'm available for talk about the bad contracts we have on our roster right now. Okay, it can happen. It can happen.
Hey, I'll slide the information along as I can, but
Right.
I do think they'd be willing to play ball as long as that evaluation gets close.
Okay. I know you've already said this. I just want a clear. I'm trying to get yes or no questions out of you. So,
okay.
All right. Have the Dolphins made more than one offer? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And the second offer that was there was and I know this goes without saying again, I'm just trying to be clear. Is it an upgrade from the original offer for what they were asking for?
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins upped their first offer, which was rejected pretty, quickly in the NFL world. Like, it's not like a fancy football trade where you got a notification a minute and it got it rejected like right away.
Yep.
But it wasn't I was told it was not something that was considerable to the Colts via their asking price.
Awesome. What is the likelihood that he gets traded to the Miami Dolphins percentage-wise?
Now,
before you answer,
okay.
Ian Rappaport was just on with Pat McAfee, and I'm updating Twitter as we speak, or X, whatever it's called now. Okay. Ian Rappaport said that it is very likely that he gets traded more than he stays with the team. What is your thoughts?
I still think the Dolphins get the largest percent. I think recently I put it at like 50%. He's not traded. 35 Dolphins, 15 the field. I think that's what my tweet was, and someone can correct me if it was a little different. I think I would probably change it to 40% Dolphins, 40% stays with the Colts, 20% field. Like that's probably what I would do. In the 5% increase to the field is because the second team that was in negotiations with the Colts, the first time the offer was in, it really wasn't like an actual consideration piece, kind of like the Dolphins' first offer, but the Dolphins had multiple offers put in.
And what do you think is the deadline for this to happen? Is it 3:00 tomorrow, or is this something that they could wait till week 1?
I mean, the Colts, I don't think the Colts are going to be interested in negotiating when the season starts. Like, I think that's the big part of this.
Okay.
Like, the Colts want to get to the season. They have a rookie quarterback. They have a rookie head coach. They have things that they need to put their focus on more, right? So they do not want to have to be negotiating a trade for a disgruntled player when the season starts. So that Tuesday deadline, I think, is real to them. Like, they want a trade to get done before this cut down because they want – to move on to the season, whether that is with Jonathan or if that is without him.
So now I got one last question because you gave me something that jogged the memory here.
No problem.
So you mentioned I like the odds. I've been at 50-50. From the last 24, 48 hours, it's either going to it's flip a coin, Dolphins or Colts. Now you just brought that into 40-40, which is fine, but then there's that 20% component. Now, from your knowledge, remember, this is not you as a Dolphin fan. This is you from the other side of things, objectively looking from what you've heard of the deals and the generalities. Hypothetically, if that 20% comes to fruition and another driver on the road knocks Greer off the road and throws a deal that might be considered better, do you think, from what you know the level of interest is on Chris Greer and the Dolphins, in history, he goes away? Do you think Chris Greer is going to go back to his drawing board from your knowledge of the situation and say, you know what? We can't lose him. We're not going to let this other team get him. We got to play hardball to their court, and I got to give that first-round pick. Or I got to give that – what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Chris Greer as much as you guys do, as much as your fan base does, obviously. I will say, I mean, there have been multiple offers. Like you asked me earlier if it's been more than one. Like there's been more than two. Like there's been multiple offers back and forth. So it's
more than two?
Yeah, so there's been more than two offers made.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was 7. To be, I mean, look, if you're going to sprinkle anything you can, you might as well throw everything in the kitchen sink, right?
There's been multiple offers. So like they're interested, right? Like there is no maybe not. Like there are teams that called, got a price from Taylor, got a medical thing. Like they did all those things and then didn't go the process of making an offer to the Colts, right? Like that's not been the Dolphins' case. So the Dolphins obviously are willing to play ball with whatever Jonathan Taylor's contract request to them is, right? Like that is the first step.
By the way, what number do you think that is? Over, under 13? Over, under 13?
Over.
Okay.
See, okay, so to put into perspective, and I just need to understand this if I can go into the future and see it. And someone, if you're the guy to tell me it, I'm going to ride with it. Chris Greer had $4 million for Dalvin Cook. So is Jonathan Taylor 3 times more valuable than Dalvin Cook?
I mean, yes. So
okay.
I think in a sense he's more valuable. First and foremost, Dalvin Cook is someone that has struggled with injuries each season, right? Like there's been things that have popped up there. So I think the medical concern is going to be larger. That pops up. For Taylor, there's been this one situation that is currently lingering that is causing the issue, right? Like he was not someone that struggled with injuries in college. This is not someone that struggled with injuries before this ankle became an issue. This ankle is an issue right now, right? And then you add in the fact that Taylor is still only 25. Like whoever is going to sign Jonathan Taylor for this next contract is probably going to get prime Jonathan Taylor the entirety of that contract. I think there were questions, and not just Dolphins, I think across the league, where teams did not know if they were getting a prime Dalvin Cook for multi-years, but if Dalvin Cook is in that prime now. Like, I don't think that's a question with Jonathan Taylor.
I 100% agree with you. All right. What does your next 12 hours look like, 24 hours look like, Destin? I'm sure it's going to be crazy for you. What does your next 24 hours look like?
Yeah, I mean we're in the busy season, right? I mean this is what we do this business for. I mean we had all the weeks of just nothing new to report on. So the Colts are currently in cut down road. We're working the phones to try to see who's not making the roster, who's been guaranteed a roster spot. So you'll probably see a lot of that on my feed. I've been waiting for some of these follower accounts to drop of Dolphins fans unfollowing me after the Jonathan Taylor saga.
No, we're
so
not doing that, Destin. You're with us for life, baby. You're with us for life.
We'll see, but like I said, I've enjoyed the back and forth with Dolphins fans a lot more than some fan bases during this time. So I wouldn't hate it.
We try to say it. We're good people. Hey, one last quick question, not related to Jonathan Taylor. Is there an offensive lineman that you think is good that's going to get cut by 3 p.m. tomorrow from you guys?
That's a good question.
Not by the Colts.
Okay.
I mean, I think the Colts, like a lot of teams, are looking at everyone else's.
Yeah.
The Browns are going to cut like 3 rosterable linemen. Like the Browns are deep at offensive line, so I would definitely watch their cuts. I know I am, to see where those guys go, or maybe if a trade happens again. They already traded one away that I really liked, and Wheatley had a really good preseason. He's going to your guys' friends, the Patriots. So
they're not our friends, Destin. We don't talk about the Cheatriots on our channel, man. And Whack Jones.
Hey, we're also not a Patriots fan base here in Indianapolis, so I think we're good.
We can agree that we can love to hate the Patriots together.
Yeah, there it is.
We love it, man. Hey, tell us about AtoZ Sports and where they can find all your stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, AtoZ Sports, really up and coming area. Really have loved my time here. I've been here for about 2 months now. We have full-time people covering multiple teams across the NFL, so make sure you guys are checking it out. We have people covering the Dolphins as well. So if you need Dolphins content, AtoZ has Dolphins content. But for me, I'm covering the Colts at AtoZ Sports. So AtoZ Sports / Indianapolis. You can find all of my articles, a few that have involved the Dolphins, if you've heard in the past weeks. So make sure you guys are checking it out there, I guess. But my tweets will continue to cover the entire NFL. So maybe I'll be able to hold on to some Dolphins fans, I guess.
Hey, if this trade does end up going down in the next 24 hours, I would love to have you back on.
Yeah, you guys have my contact information. I'm down for whenever.
All right, man. Destin, ladies and gentlemen, Destin Adams, AtoZ Sports. Make sure you go follow him on X, Twitter, whatever it's called, at the Destin Adams. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Destin. Have a great week.
I know the whole city rising. A little early, it's a bit surprising. Business moves, now we enterprising. Switch it up, now we improvising. Go to get in the winter column. Whole squad been trained to go. Fence for life, we throw the foe.